So we have Bo here today. He is our
Hey.
organizational specialist at Workforce. And also we have Larry, who is a best-selling author, an award-winning CEO, and a U.S. Army vet. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys.
Slightly cooler than us.
Yeah, a little bit cooler.
Well, I'm glad I got the cool factor. That's good.
Yeah.
You talk to my kids and there's zero cool factor. So yeah. Let me give you a little bit more background. Yeah, I spent a bunch of years in the military, about 9 in special forces. And my first job out was as a night auditor at a little no-tell motel in San Francisco. And so I started there and I moved to the front desk is what they used to call it. And I've done housekeeping and I've bussed tables and I've done it all in the hotel industry, and became a partner in that hotel company and have owned my own hotels over the years. And so I've been doing this for about 30 some years at this point. And so this is kind of in my blood. All right. And the stuff that I write books on and articles on and speak about is the stuff that we're talking about today. And that's kind of like peak potential among your teams and building teams that are highly effective. Because boy, do we need it nowadays, right? Because
absolutely.
People are talking about this great resignation that's going on. We may get into that a little bit later. So that's kind of my background. Should we jump into it, or Bo, do you want to get some?
I actually forgot to mention one thing that people usually really like. So at the end of the webinar, we're going to be doing a survey. And everyone who completes the survey, you get the chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So just something to throw out there.
Pick me. All right. Shall I go ahead? Go ahead, or Bo, do you want to go ahead?
I think we're ready to go.
Well, listen, hey, the hotel and hospitality industry is for folks who have been asleep for the last 18 months, has been absolutely crushed from this pandemic and shut down. And, the sad part is, folks, that for the most part, this has nothing to do with your operational expertise. The rug has been ripped out from under us, And so a lot of us have been kind of really scrambling on what the heck do we do to survive, right? Mm-hmm. And for those who have survived, because we know, everybody, you look around, a lot of your competition that didn't survive, right? There's some prognosticators that are expecting in some of the major markets that 25% of the hotels will never reopen. Get your brain around that for a minute. It's pretty remarkable, right? And so the hospitality sector really took the biggest hit. And I think it's going to be like one of the last industries to come out or to actually see any sort of recovery. And so that's pretty darn sad. And I think it's going to be slow. Go ahead, Bob.
What would you say that the cause of that is?
Well, travel restrictions for starters. Technology is another one. People aren't non-essential travel just isn't in anyone's budget any longer. We've gotten very used to doing things like this right now and to doing video calls. So those sorts of things. Yeah. And with business travel taking such a huge dump, think about this. Think about these extended stay properties or some of these properties that you see in corporate parks where they are expected to be filled from Sunday through Thursday, but either the businesses are closed.
Right.
Office buildings are running, record high vacancies at this point. Who the heck is staying at these Courtyard Marriotts and those types of properties, right?
I was actually just talking to a customer. I apologize.
No, please. That's what this is for. Go.
I was just talking to a customer who was requesting some in-person training, and that was probably the first time in over a year and a half that we've even heard of anyone opting to do that kind of engagement. So I think you're right on the ball. A lot of the business travel and the tourism, definitely, you're kind of getting the worst of both worlds hitting on both ends.
Yeah, I remember. I'm old enough to be around when the 9/11 impact on the industry hit, and at that point we were saying that was the worst hit that we've had since World War II, right?
Wow.
Well, prognosticators and analysts and data surveyors now are saying that the pandemic has hurt the industry, or the negative impact on the industry is 9 to 10 times as great as that of the impact on 9/11. This is real, my friends. This is not something. It kind of gets a little frustrating when I hear people are saying, "Yeah, well, the industry is recovering. I am in this coastal hotel in Southern California with great views of the ocean, and we're having record rates. Right? Yeah, because that what I call revenge travel, that pent up demand for leisure travel, that's coming back, right?
Yes.
And where are people going? They want to have memorable experiences. They've been cooped up for a year and a half. So if they're going to go, they're not. I'm sorry, Bakersfield, but they're not going to Bakersfield, California. Okay, they're going to go to coastal California, or they're going to go to coastal Oregon, or they're going to go to nice places where they can actually get out and experience things.
Get outside.
Get outside, exactly. So, interestingly, on the slide here, we've got some interesting stats, I think, from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. In the job vacancies, here's the challenge. One of the challenges. Some of the hotels are indeed open, right? Some of the restaurants are open. You've probably been to a restaurant where you've had to wait for 2 hours to get a seat, or they say, come back, or we put signs up. They say, hey, give us some breathing room. We know we're understaffed, right?
Right.
But job vacancies in August 2021, there was 1,747 job vacancies in the hospitality industry, not across the U.S., in the hospitality industry, okay? Job hires in August 2021 were 1,288,000. So there's a 500 employee deficit right out of the gate, right? But what is even more alarming, and this is what a lot of people don't look at, is the job separations. There's been almost 1.5 million separations in August. That's turnover.
Wow.
This impacts your business, your operational efficiency.
Yeah.
And they say that it costs up to 50% of the annual salary for an entry-level replacement, right? If it's a mid-level person, it can cost you up to 150% of the annual salary. For your managers, for your executives, it's up to 215%. So this turnover is real.
It's expensive. You are hurting my HR heart. Like,
I know, right?
This is just a lot.
Right? I've started to twist the knife. One of the things I like to say is that reality is our friend, right?
Yeah.
We have to face this reality.
Yeah.
And we have to shift because of it.
Right.
The scary part is that there are a lot of folks who are still doing business today like they were doing it in 2019, which is one of the great things about Workforce, the tools that you guys are providing that helps people kind of get up to speed and run their businesses more efficiently, because this recovery is not going to happen. It's not. I remember when this thing first happened, we were sitting around executive committee meetings, and I was saying, my gut tells me it's going to be a V recovery, but we need to plan as if it's going to be an L or a J or whatever letters we were using at the time, or a W recovery, right?
Right.
And I don't know. It's like an alphabet recovery at this point, but we're not going to see a full recovery for several years at this point.
Yeah.
And we need to face that.
If we're not going to see that, like what McKinsey's predicting with 5 years, you can't wait an extra 2 to make an adjustment 2 years from now for those remainder of 3 years. That decision has to come right now.
Exactly.
That's change we need in order to wade through this time frame.
Yeah, well, sadly, Bo and Meg, you guys both know this. The problem with that, though, is that it takes courage to make those decisions, right? And one of the things that helps build that courage is by having information, which is one of the great things I like about what you guys are doing. You provide information for people, right? Because if we're just trying to make decisions based on data that we had from 2019, we know on our gut it's going to be wrong,
right?
But the problem, I think, with a lot of property managers in particular is that they're so stuck in their day-to-day operations because they're so understaffed that the economic ramifications and them filling positions is scaring the bejeebus out of them. They don't have time to go out and do more research, right? And so the more they can rely on technology, make quick decisions, and then just make course corrections, I think the better for everybody. But this is definitely having operational impacts on the business.
I'm sorry.
No, go.
I might jump in here. So prior to Workforce, I was in HR at a big box retailer. And your day-to-day when you're in the store, you're just getting through to hit your numbers, hit your metrics. And it's really hard to be proactive because you have so much on your plate right then and there. So having a tool or just having something that can do it for you would just make everything so much better. Because, frontline, you are just like running around doing everything and hoping people show up.
Yeah. And with a labor shortage too, you're probably doing a lot of positions below you.
Of course,
picking up the slack.
Hey, if you're a salaried person at a hotel right now or a restaurant, yes, you are doing everything else. You're covering front desk. You are cleaning rooms. You're doing maintenance. You're running ragged, and you're working a lot more hours. And I belong to a bunch of online forums for hospitality workers, hotel owners, and it's very interesting to see the difference in some of those team members who are feeling job satisfactory and fulfillment versus those who are just, excuse the language, bitching and complaining about their jobs. And when it comes down to when you start watching the threads and seeing people comment, it's because no one's communicating with them. That's a good lesson, I think, for all of us, right? We have to communicate during these times of crisis, during these times of chaos. And so if you're watching this thing and you've got anyone that you are leading in an organization, please communicate with them. And I think the best form of communication during crisis is over communication. You know, you can't retreat to your office and just expect that people are going to figure it out on their own. Oh, they work here every day. They know what's going on. No, they don't know what's going on oftentimes.
Right.
So let's switch gears here a little bit. And this is a little bit of a dated chart, but obviously the hospitality industry, every segment is just being crushed. And you can see by this that independent hotels and upper mid-scale hotels are seeing the quickest and strongest recovery, although still we're not going to get back to 2019 for several more years. Interestingly, the value of the hotel and motel industry in the U.S. in 2019 was $198 billion. Okay. And that was slashed by about 48% in 2020, down to what was about 107 billion. And it's not expected to get back up in 2021 to about 154 billion. So these are real dollars. And for those folks who think that these hotel owners are just out there, they're fat cats making a lot of money, that's not the case. Most of these hotels across the country are owned by families, moms and pops. They may be managed by a larger entity, but the ownership are individual families or individual people, for the most part, who own most of the hotels across here. So this is having a real impact on lives. And if they're like me, which many of them are, they're coming out of their own pocket to cover shortfalls, right? To keep people employed when they can. But it's just it's a very interesting. I don't think we've seen it before. Meg, you probably know better than I do, where you've got so many job vacancies and so many people who are unemployed. Like something's going on here, and so I think we've got to do a little bit of analysis on that. And I don't know if this is we'll get there, I guess. So overtime, this is what's happening. We're talking about the salaried people are covering a lot of shifts at this point, right? Well, it's because we can't get team members to come work for us.
I actually heard, I read in the news, Cane's, which is, I don't know if that's just a Chicago-based chain.
No, it's the chicken chain.
Yeah, okay, it's nationwide. They rolled out an announcement sometime this week, so it's fairly new, that they're having some of their corporate employees go work in the stores. And like, they're all, when they get onboarded at Cane's, they're trained to cashier, even if you're a salaried employee. Yeah. But now because they never thought they'd actually have to use those skill sets, but now they're just pulling them in to go and like fry up some chicken and use the cash register, which I was like, whoa. Yeah,
it's getting very nutty out there. And so the problem is, though, that overtime leads to, and we're going to get into this here in a bit, but we forget about it, it leads to burnout. It's nice in the short term. It gives people a little bit of extra cash in the pocket. But oftentimes operators, managers, particularly property level managers or department heads, forget that you're not just paying time and a half or double time. You're paying a whole lot more in taxes. Your taxes double. Well, it's just much more expensive to have overtime. But what we're going to have to budget for going forward is we're just going to have to budget for higher salaries. You're going to have to budget for more overtime. And you're going to have to communicate with your owners if you're not an owner on this. If you're an owner, you got to accept. You're going to see overtime. We're in budgeting season now, right?
Yeah.
You're going to see more overtime in 2022. You're going to have to increase your wages. You're going to have to offer more benefits if you can.
Yeah, it's like what you were saying earlier on in the webinar. You know, we really have to hone in onto the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And as you're building those budgets, if you're not being real with yourself and with the business on your expected overtime costs, then your numbers aren't going to be correct. You're going to be way off budget.
Yeah, for sure. And this burnout is just going to lead to more and more people quitting, just walking off the job. I hear stories almost every day of people who will interview or actually set up interviews and then people not show up for interviews.
Yeah.
I've seen people come in and do a day of training and go to the restroom and never come back. You know, really crazy stuff that you didn't realize just a couple of years ago. Right. And so, some of the headlines here will give you a week off. Please don't quit. We're seeing that a lot, but this is kind of reactionary, right? We've seen more people doing hiring bonuses. You know, it used to be you could give somebody $50 or $100 as a hiring bonus or for a referral, and now you're looking at $300, $500, $1,000 for entry-level positions. This is the reality of the employment landscape right now, and we're going to have to just figure this thing out. And you know, that problem with the problem of, I'm going to go back a couple of slides here. One of the reasons RevPAR just dropped so much, not only because there was just less demand, but when things did open up, the strategy that a lot of hotels took is it was a rate strategy. Let's race to the bottom. Let's try to get people to come stay at our hotels because we've got low rates. So if a 4-star property lowers their rates by $40, they're now competing with mid-scale properties, and mid-scale properties have to lower their rates. You know, it's like everyone ends up getting impacted by this. And of course, that delta in the average daily rate is oftentimes the profit that you're making on your rooms. This is it's an ugly, ugly cycle that we're in right now.
So basically, you're decreasing revenue to the point of break even, and then you're increasing costs on all of these overtime expenses and turnover expenses.
That's right. Yeah, so it's scary. So some of the things that we're doing in our organization is what I'm hoping a lot of people doing. We're cross-training as much as possible, absolutely as much as possible, so that not only salaried people are filling in hourly positions, but we're doing that in emergency cases. We are not taking hourly positions from people for salary. By having salary people step in. They're stepping into these hourly positions because there's nobody to fill the positions, right? So cross-training is really important, except that there is going to be overtime. All right, so if labor goes up, which is our most costly, expense in the hotel, that means we have to get really efficient when it comes to all these other purchasing. And we went in and we just renegotiated every contract we had. Everything that was outsourced, we went in and renegotiated. That's just what you're going to have to do. Now, we are limiting our drug testing now. We used to drug test everybody who came into the organization, right? And we're limiting that now. If you handle cash, we're doing it. We're still doing our background checks on those types of positions. I think that's a wise thing that you should be doing. But we're loosening those types of things. And I'd love to hear from folks if you've got other ideas on what you're doing to handle this. I'd appreciate it. But this is one of the signs, Meg, that you're kind of talking about, that you're seeing in more and more places.
Yeah.
Please be patient. We're very understaffed. You're seeing that every place that you go. Right? So it's a scary time, I think, if you've never been through this. And that's the thing I'm going to say. If you're like a first-time manager or supervisor, and you're going through this right now, lean into it a little bit. I remember when the pandemic first hit, there were people like me. Hey, we'd been through 9/11. We'd been through earthquakes. We'd been through downturns. Is this worse than any of those? Yes, of course it is, now that we're on the other side. But we were a little bit battle scarred, right?
Right.
But for those folks who had never been through anything, it was their first supervisor management position. It was like deer in the headlights. Well, guess what? This is going to make you stronger. It's going to make you a better leader. you're going to be better on the other side of this. By the time you get my wise old age, you're going to be a lot wiser, and you have a more positive impact in your life and your family and your community because you've been through this. One of the things I often talk about is like the greatest generation they talk about was those folks that served in World War II and came back and rebuilt America. Well, the reason they were the greatest generation is not because they went to World War II. It's because they lived through the Depression, right? It was very tough. So they got tough, then they went off and served, and then they came back and rebuilt. So this is kind of what I'm trying to tell my son and my daughter, who's 17 and 20 right now, I know it sucks right now, but we'll get through it, and you're going to be a better human because of it. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the positivity that we haven't really heard a lot of in the whole situation, that, it may take 5 years, but we will hit that 5 years.
That's right.
Things will eventually.
Guess what? Every day we're getting closer to it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so what are we learning in this experience? The people that are sticking with you, that are doing the overtime, those are going to be great leaders for your organization.
Absolutely, because they're willing to they're showing sacrifice, right? But we have to embrace those people. It's funny and not so funny what a positive impact, just an encouraging word, can be on somebody.
Yes,
Thank you for doing this. This is really helping us out. And one of the things we try to talk about in our organization is to remind people, particularly leisure travelers. Many people have saved up an entire year or 2 years or 5 years to go on this trip that they're on right now. That's most of America, right? That really is most of America. Most Americans don't have disposable income that they can fly off on a weekend, take their family, and go stay at the Montage in Laguna Beach. That's very small number.
Right.
Most people save. And so we have like a moral obligation that once they're there at our hotel, to serve them as best we can. And it's not us against them, that they're here. Those guests, they're just bothering me right now. Right? And so, but to do that as leaders, as managers, as operators, we need to make sure that our team member have the right resources, right, to do their job. If it's a room attendant, let's make sure they have dust wands, right? If it's an executive housekeeper, let's make sure that they've got technology to more efficiently manage and staff their departments, right? Let's make sure that we've got tools where we can communicate more effectively with our concierge services to our guests. Those are things those used to be nice to haves, but moving forward, these are going to be must haves because we just don't have the staff to do it. And this technology brings efficiencies to the workforce, and we just have to remain flexible as well. So, all right. So, so I guess solutions for long-term viability is we got to track this burnout thing. Feedback is key. Too often, we put somebody on the schedule, we expect them to show up. 6 months go by, they're still working and they've got zero feedback. That's not a good solution. We have to be giving two-way communication in our businesses. Owners, management companies, we have to give our managers a lot more leeway to schedule overtime, but also come up with tools that if you can cut people from overtime mid-shift, do it. We have to be hawk-like. We have to be, hawk-like is probably a good way to put it, in watching our expenses. And again, implement cross-training and do more forecasting. Forecast. Be a prognosticator. Look at past data. Look at what the competition is doing, and move out.
Yeah, I think from Workforce's perspective on the software front, we're kind of trying to achieve 3 different objectives when it comes to this overtime issue. Number 1 is to understand it. Number 2, to inform on it. And then 3, adjust against it.
Yeah.
So from that scheduling based on demand, what I'm looking at right here on the screen is it's about understanding when we're going to be busy and when we're not. So that, when we're trying and making a conscious effort to schedule overtime, when are we putting those overtime hours on people? Because if we are scheduling overtime hours in busier parts of the day, that's going to be inherently more stressful, I think, for an employee. Whereas if we can try and tap into different scheduling mechanisms and give, people who are working longer hours, lighter workloads, maybe that's an opportunity for us to understand and make decisions on this data. From an informing perspective too, just understanding as things happen, we can get notifications. We can get this information to the people who need it. When we know that someone's close to overtime, we also know from a psychological perspective, they're probably dealing with more, burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we know that it's not busy, we're getting notifications proactively. As Meg was saying earlier, if I'm on the ground and I'm not necessarily looking at my computer, I'm not paying attention to what's happening on the other side of the building, these things can easily be forgotten about. But if you're being proactive with your technology, getting notified, then you can make easy decisions of, hey, maybe I don't need this person. They're about to be in overtime. I can make a proactive decision without having to do any research on my own. So the other component would be to adjust as they go. And that's going to be the similar mindset, is how we're going to take the information as it happens and make adjustments. So I don't know if you have any experiences with that or things you can touch on, but those would be, from a software's perspective, how much can we automate? How much can we collect from a data perspective so that we can make informed decisions, not have to spend time doing that research, and make a more efficient labor?
Yeah, I think that a lot of managers just go intuitively. Here's what I think is happening.
Yeah, right.
And as we know, what's measured is improved. You take someone's intuition, but then you start measuring things and like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Simple things, right? And so this is what I like about these types of tools, is that the data doesn't lie. It can be spun to tell a different story, right? But if you're honest with it, it can really tell a story. And what I like about these types of software packages is that they can become predictive, right? Because there's a lot of lagging indicator information out there, right? We can look in the past, but it's what do you do with that information? And when you can turn it from lagging indicator information into leading indicator information, that's where the genius happens. This is where average managers, good managers become great managers, right? When they utilize these types of things.